In a country where gossip traveled faster than the wind, and a man's worth was often measured by the woman on his arm, there lived a man named Ayaan Qureshi, who by the age of 35 had politely but firmly refused every woman who had ever approached him, not out of pride, arrogance, or cruelty, but because he was waiting for something or someone that could not be rushed, measured, or negotiated. Ayaan was devastatingly handsome, tall, calm, with eyes like deep brown storms that hid emotions he never shared. And his life was orderly, precise, successful, yet intentionally devoid of romance, for he carried a promise made 17 years earlier on a rainy night in a hospital corridor, holding his mother's hand as she whispered her last words. "If love ever comes to you, it will not demand. You will recognize it because it will arrive like truth." And from that moment, Ayaan had resolved that his heart would not be sold to anyone, no matter how tempting, no matter how socially advantageous. As his technology empire rose and the nation labeled him the most eligible bachelor, countless women tried to enter his life, from glamorous actresses who invited him to candlelit dinners to heiresses whose families sent lavish gifts. Yet each time, Ayaan listened carefully, admired sincerity, and then said no, with a quiet finality that left the world puzzled and intrigued, newspapers speculating, late-night shows debating. Yet he never defended himself, for defending implies doubt, and Ayaan had none. He spent his days in disciplined routine, running along empty roads at dawn, working tirelessly in offices lit with fluorescent light, reading old books at night, feeling the quiet weight of solitude and the invisible promise to himself, until one stormy evening, while seated on a delayed flight, a woman entered the seat beside him, a woman who did not recognize him, who did not glance twice, who simply buckled her seatbelt and exhaled in exhaustion rather than awe. And in her calm presence, Ayaan felt a stir in his chest, a recognition that was not desire or curiosity, but something quieter, something impossible to ignore, a foreshadowing of the moment when his lifelong refusal might meet its first challenge. The first time Ayaan saw her again, it was by accident, or perhaps by fate, in a small, quiet library far from the city lights and the relentless eyes of the nation. And she was sitting alone with an old book, the same calm aura surrounding her, the same subtle grace, the same presence that made Ayaan's disciplined heart skip a beat. Yet he noticed something different. She did not look at him with curiosity. She did not whisper his name to anyone. She simply existed in her own world, and that world, somehow, mirrored his own silence and patience. And when their eyes met, she smiled, not seductively, not nervously, but with a quiet, knowing serenity that unnerved him. She introduced herself as Sara Ali, a teacher in a small-town school, whose life was simple, purposeful, untouched by fame or wealth, and yet every word, every gesture, spoke directly to him without expectation, without manipulation. And for the first time in years, Ayaan found himself speaking freely, revealing parts of his life he had never shared, not as a show of vulnerability, but as a silent truth that demanded no judgment. Days turned into weeks, meetings became frequent yet unforced, and Ayaan discovered the intoxicating calm of being seen without pressure. And for the first time, he realized that his refusal had never been about rejecting women, but about waiting for someone who would arrive not through persuasion or social obligation, but by pure, unassuming presence. Yet when Sarah learned who he truly was, she hesitated, afraid of the shadow his fame could cast over her quiet world. And in a moment that mirrored the first pain of love, she stepped back, leaving him with an ache he had never experienced, a vulnerability that pierced the armor he had built for decades. And for weeks, Ayaan wrestled with emptiness and longing, until he found her again at a small charity program she was hosting, where children laughed and chaos was organized into joy. And seeing her there, so natural, so untouchable by the pressures of his world, he understood that this time he could not protect himself by saying no, that the promise he made to his mother demanded he recognize this truth. And when he finally approached her, he offered no wealth, no power, no grand declarations, only honesty, only the simple, undeniable truths that he could no longer ignore. And she, in return, accepted not a man of fame or perfection, but the man she had quietly recognized long ago, the man who had refused a nation, only to find that love arrives not when one chooses it, but when it is ready to arrive, and in that acceptance, they both discovered that some stories, no matter how long they are waited for, are worth every moment of silence and every patient refusal.